Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Integrated Empath Child. We are coming together to share with you helpful ways that you can help your child manage their gifts and enjoy them so they can grow up happy, healthy, and strong. And today we're talking with author, speaker, and filmmaker Isabel Hunt about breaking through your own social construct to support your intuitive child. Welcome, Isabel. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, so I like to start with what are some of your earliest experiences of your own sensitivity and intuition?
Oh, I can't even really pinpoint it because I always thought it was normal. That's how everyone experiences the world. But I remember having said to my mom, especially a couple of times when I was younger, probably between 5 and 10, that I feel like I can see the world like it's in a snow globe and I can watch it and I can shake it and things change. And of course, at that age, your parents are like, oh, whatever. That sounds fun. It's cool. But I also have been able to always see everything in color, like numbers, letters, places. They just show up in my brain as color. But I always thought that was normal. So really, I didn't learn that that was a gift or something that not everyone experiences that way until I was probably in my 20s. So I didn't grow up in a home. I actually grew up in Germany. I was born and raised in Germany, and we grew up under communism, East Side. And so there wasn't much access to the spiritual knowledge that we have today. And maybe that's even a reason why I had to leave my country, just to discover that more, to kind of rediscover myself in a different place. Um, but as a child, I never paid attention to it. I just kind of did what I had to. And I'm the oldest of five, so I had enough to do in taking care of my four younger siblings. We're all very close together, so I never really got that individual attention. So I kind of just wiggled myself through life pretty much, and yeah, and discovered it even more in my 20s.
Do you feel like your intuition has been an important part of navigating your decisions in life?
Yes, certainly. Because when I was 12, 13 years old, that's when I had my first prophetic dream where I saw myself on a stage speaking in front of, I don't know what number it was, but it looked like a couple thousand. And I was speaking in a different language. And I didn't know what that language was until a few years later, we had Americans come to our little sleepy town. And when I heard them speak, I could feel the connection to that dream. It just suddenly came back up. And at 18, that's when I left my home country for the first time. Just I'm like, okay, well, if I have to go there, then I need to figure out, for one, how to speak English properly, and second, maybe it's not even for me. But I did come here at 18. I lived in DC for a while, and it just felt like I was coming home. For whatever reason, I felt I've been here before. I know what this is like. I have to come back here. And then from that moment forward, I kept hearing those voices that said, you need to finish what you started. And I never knew what that meant. And I still really don't know. But apparently, and if someone believes in past lifetimes, I do. Apparently, at some point, I did something here in a different lifetime. Um, that influences my work today that I have to finish up, and I still don't know exactly what. So really my entire life, from that year in DC to going back to studying sociology, psychology, to coming back here when I was 26, and then also getting married to my husband, all of that is based on my intuition. I don't think, and that was actually something that I still remember. At some point I was really in a really struggle through this. I'm like, okay, I can't figure out the finances. I don't know if I can stay here. And that was one question that I always remember my dad asked me, and he said, what is your gut feeling telling you? What is your intuition telling you? And he never asked me that before. And so I still remember that I was sitting on a train in San Francisco. And he asked me, what is your gut feeling telling you? And from that moment on, I just really listened more to it and make pretty much all of my decisions based on my intuition.
Wow, kind of makes you wonder, what abilities dad had, right?
Oh, I actually think he has very similar gifts. He's also very sensitive, but he is a very pragmatic, analytical type of person. We do similar work in general. He's also coaching, and it's called Wing Wave in Germany, which is about releasing trapped trauma.
Wow.
But he's not doing as much work on himself to discover that ability. I think it's still a little scary. And I don't know if he will. Maybe in his next lifetime. I don't know.
Well, I think it's interesting, like looking back over the course of your life, how intuition showed up for you. Because
Yeah.
I think for children and parents who have intuitive children, it's interesting how those intuitive hits come in. And you had mentioned having a prophetic dream and
Mhm.
hearing a voice, and all these different ways that intuition came to you. What are some of the ways other than what you've shared so far, just to give people an idea of what intuition looks like? Because it's this unseen sort of phenomenon that is very real for people like us who experience this on a daily basis, just being connected to ourselves and really embracing who we are in that way. So, what are some of the other ways that intuition shows up?
Intuition shows up on an emotional level. That has been my biggest experience. If when I work with clients who are not so much spiritually connected or understand their emotional world from a spiritual perspective, they can't quite figure out how to listen to their intuition. So, how intuition really shows up for me is my emotional response to it. Like, for example, if I have a decision to make and I feel like, okay, this is really like putting me into fear mode, or this is putting me into complete, um, safe control mode, then I have to take a look at why do I feel this way? Like for me right now, it just happens really fast. But usually, if I were to trust my situation and everything, usually when the fear shows up, that's the way I'm supposed to go. Because fear pretty much is a cheerleader for us when we're in front of a decision saying, hey, you've got this. It might take you out of your comfort zone, but you got this. I guess that's this really awesome cheerleader. It's not a lot of people like, oh, there's fear. Unless you let it control you, then of course it's not great. But if it becomes too comfortable, usually those are not the decisions that are right for me and for the journey moving forward. And it's something that I teach my 6-year-old as well. When he has to make a decision, I ask him, so how does it feel to you if you were to do this and if you were to do that? And as a parent, you usually kind of know the consequences of things that they want to do at that age, right? And so you let them decide, like, okay, does it feel a little scary or does it feel like really good? Um, and then usually I let him decide, like, what do you want to go with? And then just see what the consequences are. And eventually you'll figure out what really aligns with yourself and what does not. And he's actually really good knowing his limits, knowing his boundaries, and he's pretty good at communicating them as well because um, we just ask him, like, what is your heart saying? Like, what's coming up emotionally? So emotional um, messages are the most powerful in ways in trusting your intuition and how it shows up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of these kids are they feel emotions that are almost beyond what they are socially ready for as children. They can pick up on so
Mhm.
many different intensities and variabilities of I just made up a word, but different variables of emotions where it's sometimes it's beyond where they're able to go, but it's I love what you said about having a little bit of fear is actually okay because it's a bit of a challenge. It's not the no or the fear that's a danger. It's more of a fear of, oh my goodness, it's my first day of school. I've got that
Mhm.
feeling, or I'm gonna give a speech in front of my class, or I'm getting ready to play that big soccer game. That kind of fear is different than the danger type of fear. And when we when we try to teach kids what the difference is, I love how you're having that dialogue with your son about really checking in with himself and how he feels in his heart, because sometimes that true yes does have a little flavor or tinge of
Yeah.
fear or uncomfortability, but it's still a true yes.
Yeah, definitely. I always think about it this way. I really believe that pretty much every child is very highly intuitive, because they are pure souls. They're not pure because there is the epigenetics, and the different lifetimes that they have gone through or their soul has gone through. And so there's always an experience attached to who they are from the very beginning. But at a core level, almost every child, if you were to allow them the ability to step into that space, they're all very highly intuitive and very highly sensitive. If we had a world with only children, I think we would be perfectly fine. They
Mhm.
would totally figure it out. They just have a different way of communicating with themselves, with each other. Pretty much the problems that show up with children is a reflection of the parent. Most of it. It either is something that, some kind of trauma that has been carried on subconsciously, but from one generation to the next, or something happened during pregnancy, or the mother was always stressed during pregnancy, or a lot of anxiety, which is quite normal nowadays. Um, and that has an impact on how the child experienced the world around them. And recognizing that, I think we can help almost every child to step into that intuitive self and this highly sensitive self of being. If we understand that most of the problems we experience and challenges that we experience with our children is a reflection of our own expectations of life, but also the expectations that we have on our children, how we think they should react or how we think they should act.
Mhm.
We all do it subconsciously. That's how we have been raised. This is how the social construct is working. This is what is acceptable. You don't throw yourself on the floor at the grocery store. Well, go ahead. If this is all very overwhelming to you, let me tell you, the first time I went to an American grocery store, I want to do this exact same thing. It's so overwhelming and everything is so big. Like everything is 3 to 4 times bigger than in any other country. So it is overwhelming, but I think a lot of times we have those certain expectations where we don't notice that they are children. They're also individuals. Like there's no difference on an energetic level between a child and an adult. And there are just so many expectations that we put on them that eventually, if we don't have that awareness about ourselves, we take away the ability of being that intuitive. How many times do we tell our children, well, this is just how it is, or this is what you should do? And I do it too, I'll be honest. Like there are times where I just want to get over with something and I'm like, oh, just do it or just get it done. But I really try, and I hope I, can push this through as long as I can, but to always give him the freedom to make a certain experience himself. If he doesn't want to get dressed, but he has to go to school, well, then he goes to school in his pajamas. Well, let's see if he really likes to go in his pajamas the next time again. So if he wants to be late, then he doesn't get his playtime beforehand. He goes to a Montessori school. So if he's not ready and we can go, that's a consequence. I let him experience the freedom of choice and the freedom of consequence, but also tell him that not everything that is a consequence of your experience is actually aligned with your soul, but it's part of the social construct that we live within. So he is also aware of that. He calls it the Book of Law, according to the Four Agreements, the book. I'm reading that with him. So when there are things that don't align with his spirit, he's like, oh, that's in the Book of Law and I don't like it. Can I erase it and create something different? I'm like, yep, you can reprogram your entire social construct and how you experience the world. Go for it. And I always just tell them, as long as it is done with kindness, with compassion, and with respect, we're okay. And that is something, because a lot of parents deal with so much. It's the financial stress. It's maybe you just lost your job. It's all those appointments. It's keeping a roof over your head. those things keep us away from connecting with our heart. And if we cannot do it, we can't be an example to our children, and we don't know how to encourage them to do that for themselves. Does that make sense?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think as parents, there are specific challenges just in everyday life, the responsibilities that we have that are meant for adults, and
Mhm.
it's just kids can pick up on that stress. And like you were saying earlier, kids are coming in with the energy of their mom in the womb or even past lifetimes. And that is very powerful, in terms of looking
Yeah.
at a child's spiritual path, because they're meant to work through some of those challenges. But how can parents begin to expedite that process and make it quicker, make it easier for the child by dealing with their own social construct?
The quickest way to start this is to ask yourself as a parent, what is it that I need every single day? But also, instead of like, looking at a child and assume that something is wrong, instead of saying, hey, what is wrong? Just say, what do you need? Eventually, the children pick up so fast on understanding, oh, I just need a snack, or I just need a nap, or, I just actually have to go poop. Like that happened too. Those kind of things where they are in the moment, not quite aware, but if you ask them, they'll figure it out. And eventually they can regulate themselves in the way that they take care of their own needs or ask for it. And most parents don't know how to do that. They just go like, they just react on their anger, they just react on their frustration, or how often do we, because we're in a reactive mode, yell at our children when it is totally unnecessary, or send them up into the room because we feel overwhelmed, and we put that on our children, just because they just ask us question 20 times, or they threw something down because they want our attention, and we're like, oh my gosh, now you're going up in your room. That is a traumatic experience for a child that is looking for attention and then being put into a room all by themselves. And that has more to do with us, because suddenly in this moment we are so overwhelmed, but we're not aware. So awareness is a huge key for parents to be able to guide their children. And the easiest way that I always tell my clients to start this out, have a journal ready. If you're willing to do this work and you're ready to do it, then have a journal with you and pay attention to what your triggers are. For me, it's if I don't set clear times when I work, and I'm working something on my phone and he keeps constantly interrupting me, and I just get interrupted in my thought, I get very antsy and I get very impatient. And then I just push him away energetically, sometimes with words. And he may have just wanted to ask if he can eat something, and that would have taken an answer of 2 seconds. And that's something for me to become aware, and all parents really. What are the trigger points in our lives that make us react? And when we see that throughout life, especially with our children, to show more compassion to ourselves in the way we act and react in our experience, and just normalize the experience. Because if we can do that for ourselves and show love to ourselves, we give that same space to our children. We can allow them to be in the space of anger, knowing that when you're young, a lot of things change very quickly, and you grow every day and you have new experiences. You have a different conscious experience every single day. I mean, they grow in their sleep, right? And so anger is about the foundation, the boundaries that have to expand. You have to create new boundaries. And again, it's related to your needs. And so if we can give them that space of just being, or find an outlet of how they can express that in a safe way, they're more likely to stay in tune and to listen to themselves and how they experience the world. My son was also, when he was younger, very receptive to spirits, to the spiritual world. And so a lot of parents, like imaginary friends, they kind of make fun of it, or like, oh, it will pass. That is a condescending of the experience of the child. You're not taking them seriously. If you understand the spiritual world and you understand the social construct that you have been programmed within, And you can just acknowledge that experience for your child without being funny about it, or I'm like, oh yeah, you know, because we had experienced that a lot with Jonah, where he had friends over because he's an only child, so he has his imaginary friends, or spirit friends, how he called them. But then at some point he started to act out, and I'm like, who are you playing with? What do they look like? And he said, well, there's one little boy, he's always in the corner, but he looks really creepy. And so he made a really creepy face. I'm like, whoa, I think we have to do something about that. And so we created a little prayer that he says when he feels that something energetically is not all right around him. And this little boy never showed up again. We pretty much told it in the name of the creator to leave this house and to never come back. Like, I help him to understand that he has the power of words. Whatever he thinks and whatever he says, he is the one who can direct the spiritual as well as the physical world that we live in. And most parents, from what I have noticed, are, a little skeptical about that. They don't really believe in it, or, oh, that's just children. And that thought alone, oh, they are just children, diminishes their experience. Instead of, oh, my child has this experience. Well, tell me more about it. And as soon as they feel hurt, they step back into their intuition and tell you what they experience. As soon as you respect their experience, they will respect your experience.
So true. Yeah, there was a lot of goodness in what you were sharing, just in that whole passage there. Yeah, I mean, I think that validating a child's experiences with questioning dialogue, asking them questions and just being curious, not judgmental, not telling them what to believe. I think parents can get into the habit. I mean, well-intentioned parents, of course, can get into the habit of just telling their kids to do certain things, like redirecting them and guiding them. But sometimes, we can give our children more freedom in deciding, and that does allow them to truly feel into what is going on. Like, what am I feeling? What do I need? And if there's something spiritual that comes in from a different realm that they're experiencing, likewise, matter of fact, just not overreacting, being curious about it. My kids are very intuitive in different ways, and I don't see things or experience the things that they do. So it's interesting how that's kind of unfolded in our family. But like your son, if there's a being that my son can see visually when he's awake that I can't see, then, and he finds it intimidating, he has the power to direct it away. And I think that's a really important point for parents to understand in order to share with their kids, because a lot of times when spirit comes in, because children are so open, they're not always welcome or the best energy for our kids. And the children know that, like, they can sense it right away. They just don't always know what to do about it. And
how to express it.
the prayer that you came up with. I mean, we have like a similar type of ritual that we do in order to direct the energy out of the house and out of the space. And it really works. It doesn't have to be something serious or like really strange. It's just telling it to go, almost like we would with a real person. If there's a real person that you're not comfortable with or is being intimidating, you can go away. You can, say words to them to direct them away. And words are so powerful.
They are
in those words. And if the kids know that they have that ability, then they can practice that and feel more empowered, more strong, and really start to use their abilities and not be afraid of them.
Yes, that's right. Another example that is probably very familiar to a lot of parents, when you take your child to the grocery store, sometimes there are just a lot of things that are happening around them, and children are incredible observers. And that is something that I know about myself. But one time I took my son to the grocery store, we went outside. And because I had instilled already at a very young age about emotions, and asking, being more curious about what they experience. He looked at me, he's like, Mommy, I feel suddenly really, really sad. And I said, why do you think you feel sad? Well, I think there was a woman in the store that was really sad, and now I feel really sad. So um, I created a energetic protection prayer with him, so that he, like, I explained to him, you don't have to experience the world in a way that you take on everyone else's experience. I want you to leave it with them, because that is their experience. You cannot take that away from them. Otherwise, you would take away the experience from them that they need to grow. And I explained it exactly to him that way. Like, I just pretend he is another adult that I have this conversation with. If he doesn't understand it, he'll ask me. But they're smarter than what we think. They
Totally.
get it. And if we really talk to them that way, they thrive. Like, they're often way ahead to children who have always been stifled in this way. Um, so we just created this energy protection prayer, and um and then he felt good. I'm like, okay, now I feel better. I think I gave it back to her. And those are just open conversations. If every parent would have that with their children, and would be able to have that with their children, we would have a totally different world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it can be easier than we think it can be, you
Yeah.
know. But again, like you mentioned, it takes pausing, stepping back, and asking, like, what do I need to be able to handle this moment in a positive way? You know, because we don't always have that if we've had a challenging day or we're not feeling well. You know, we're human too, and it's like our kids can feel that emotion from us. And it's just, even if we're smiling and saying everything's fine, you know, they know what's going on underneath the surface. And so
Yes.
being really honest, because they can already see it, is really helpful in validating a child's perceptions, because it just validates the truth, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're upset, I mean, it sounds like you're very open and honest about the way that you feel, even if it's something that's not rosy and sunshiny, just so that your child gets that sense of congruency with
Yeah.
what they're seeing and feeling. Because sometimes parents try to conceal what their true feelings are with a smile or with saying something different to deflect. And then the child knows that there's something going on. And I
Yes.
think that's what can create a lot of confusion. I know, you know, growing up, that was an experience for me that was very challenging, because it was like laser vision on what the root of the problem is, on what the emotion is, and without getting that validation or just the
Just the
space.
feedback that it aligns with what I have been taught. Like, okay, that doesn't, like, you tell me that what I feel is anger, but when I sense that same energy with you, you tell me it's you're happy, you're okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, right? It's actually interesting, because the other day we were talking about punishment, and my husband asked my son, he's like, so what kind of punishment do we do with you? And he's like, I don't think you do. And he's like, well, sometimes mommy yells. Oh yeah, how often does mommy yell? Oh, maybe 3 times a year, but then she apologizes after. I think that's
Mm.
another point for parents to kind of get down from your high horse. And sometimes, like, I'm sorry, but mommy just really was in our head, and I totally reacted. I apologize. Or I shouldn't have said that. That was wrong. That was not very respectful. I'm sorry. Because this is how Jonah now is as well. He is turning 7 in December, and when he says something, he writes little apologize notes. I'm sorry, Daddy, that I didn't listen to you. I have one down in the kitchen because he didn't listen the other time when he was supposed to do something, and then he felt the consequence of that. And they're like, I'm sorry, Daddy, I didn't listen to you. But he's just so aware, and he's just so open to admitting when he was wrong as well, because we're doing the same thing. And that's what I'm saying. If you have a child that is consistently, without any reason, a challenge, and experiences like huge emotions, it often is a reflection of the parents.
Mm. Yeah, take that in. You know, that's a big one, because it's kind of hard to look at that fact,
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, is it just the child or what else is going on there? There's a much bigger picture in a family dynamic. And, I think that your role modeling for your son is the best way to teach, because they pick up on everything, slight facial expressions,
Oh,
tone
yes.
of voice, the words that you speak. And so we have to be very aware that in every moment we have an audience, so to speak. And
Yes.
you can be apologetic when you have your moments. We all do. I mean, if there's anyone out there who's a parent that says that they don't yell at some point, I really
I would think there is either you have no voice or there's something going on.
superhuman. Yeah, I mean, it's like we all have moments of imperfection, and if we can admit that and make it right and make it up to the person and communicate, then it's that much better. You can move on from it in a
Yeah.
more productive way. I love it. So it sounds like your son has abilities that are amazing, clairvoyant, clairsentient.
I hope I can continue this because now he's this age where it's like, okay, do I buy into the social construct or do I still continue within the spiritual? But I'm hoping that because I already do the work and this is what I focus on a daily basis, he meditates with me, he reads some of the adult books about spirituality with me. So I really hope that I can have him just continue because a lot of times around 6, 7, that's where they forget that connection, where they forget the connection with their soul and they just react to the programming that's being presented to them in school through the society, through communities, all those things that they are being exposed to. So God knows, I hope I can continue this.
Good thing is, you got him in that imprint phase, right, which is 0 to 7. So you've really fortified him with a lot of different perspectives on spirituality, on communication, everything that, it sounds like you've given him doses of that as he was growing up. So he's got it in there, it's embedded.
Yeah,
And so it's
that's the
like,
goal.
yeah, so even with him moving out into the world and being social, it's like kids go through those phases, and I do see that too with my kids. There's a little bit of a lapse that happens with
Yeah.
pure connection because they're interacting so much with the world. And so as your child goes out into the world and he's living in the normal real world as a highly sensitive and intuitive child, how do you talk to him about communicating what his experiences are? How do you approach that? Because I know it can be a bit of a taboo topic in some places.
My husband asked me the other day if there's anything ever embarrassing to me, and there really isn't much. I have no problem, saying something accidentally a little louder in a grocery store. Those kind of things. There's really not much because I have this always in the back. If it gets really hot, I just leave the country. I'm kidding, but I always have this option. But I don't limit that to him. I always say, like when there are other kids in school, for example, and they don't understand it, and he feels like they're making fun of him. He tells me about that. I'm like, oh, I didn't feel good when they said that to me because I just said that. I'm like, you have to understand this. Every soul, every person is on a different journey, and everyone has a different experience. And just because they don't know or they cannot relate to what you experienced doesn't make it less real. For you, this is real. And so I really try to instill in him the confidence that whatever he experiences is right for him. And he can say that to other children. And maybe that's why the teachers like him so much. Because he always said, well, that's your experience and this is mine, and that's it.
No,
Like he
right? It's like that's it.
That's it. And we did have a phase where he was really where the teachers that he always gets in trouble because he wants to be friends with everyone, and he thinks if he does the same crap with the kid that is trying to get him into into trouble, he connects with them. And he loves to help other children, especially when he realizes that they're alone or that they struggle with something. And so sometimes it was really hard to not have him just follow along. So I reminded him, like, hey, listen, when you listen to your heart, you know that you are a leader. That doesn't mean that you can't be a team player, but you also have to make the right decision for you. When you do this and this, does this feel good to you or not? No, usually not, because I know I'm going to get in trouble. Like, then please make this decision and be the leader and make the decision that aligns with your heart. And sometimes, as kids are, they just have to try it out. And well,
Yep.
I was like, well, did you try it out? Yeah. So what was the consequence? Well, I got in trouble. Well, what was the lesson? Well, it didn't feel good. And I actually hurt myself too. Like those kind of things. So when they do something, ask themselves, what do you think the consequence was of your decision? And what was the lesson? My husband too, he always like, so what was the lesson in this? Mm-hmm. Like when he gets up in the morning all grumpy and like starts to be really like, and like, okay, what choice got you to being so tired? Well, I was reading too long last night. He loves to read under his blanket. So what's the lesson? Well, I think I should go to bed earlier so I'm not that grumpy in the morning. And then the next day he does go to bed earlier because he knows the consequences. He experienced that. We pointed that out to him. And we've done that ever since he was 1, probably. Mm-hmm. And again, this is just what we have to do as adults too. Oh, I'm doing this choice. What is the consequence of this choice, and what is my lesson? And then we can move on. We don't have to, oh my gosh, this was wrong, and now you're being punished, and this was horrible. This is not discipline. Discipline is about giving them the freedom of choice and explaining to them that you're a free individual with free will. And if that's what you choose, then there are certain consequences. If what you choose is not in service of our family life and not in alignment with respect and compassion and kindness, then there's a consequence that is happening within the setting. I always say we're like a little community, and as a community, we all have to play our part to have a life that works. And he understands that. But I think it's because we keep saying it all over and over.
Yeah, I mean, he's got it in there. If you have that repetition going, it's in there, and I think that's the key. It's not one thing that you do, it's being consistent and allowing your child to gain the value from any experience that they have, good, bad, questionable, and just allow them to have their own perception of the experience and validate them as an individual. As little as they are, they know so much. And
oh yes, they're so wise beyond. But we think because they're children, we're kind of in charge. It's like an authoritarian system that we have created between parent and children. And therefore we stifle the uniqueness and the individuality of this child by creating a hierarchical system. And that is when we already program them for the hierarchical and for the hierarchical system within society. I have to listen to my boss. It's like this is where the constant programming comes in. And as a parent, we have to start really breaking this down so that we can create a better society and a better world for ourselves and our children.
Well said. Well, we are at almost the end of our time here, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to share about a special project that you've been working on.
Yes, over this last year, it's been a year with a couple challenges, but mostly went really well. We were working on a documentary, or we are working on a documentary called The Power of Connection, Changing the World by Changing Your Perception. And it does play in with what we were just talking about the programming and the social conditioning that we experience in the way we make decisions and how we relate to each other. We're talking also about the relationship between child and adult in the documentary. And we did a social study where my son was also part of, and he totally loved it. And he was able to do some audio recording with me as part of this. And it was just fun to do that with him. But it really is about how can we create a more of a soul connection with people, and what gets in the way of us really opening up to someone else. What are, some of the biases, some of the judgments, some of the assumptions that we make just because someone appears to be different to us. And that's something that we really want people to start having a conversation about, start being more honest with themselves. And it's the same with children. It's a relationship that needs to be established, a relationship that is based on trust and respect. If we don't give that to our children, they will not give it back to us, because how would they know? They learn by watching. And if we don't teach them what is supposed to work, how we can create a relationship that is based on those fundamentals, they just copy what they see.
Yeah.
Right? They just copy us, and we wonder why they're so disrespectful and not listen. Well, you're not really listening to them either, are you?
Yeah, I think kids learn either way, whether it's good or not so good. And that project sounds amazing. And when can we look forward to seeing that launch?
Oh, well, we already got nominated for the Impact Award, and the award for the submission, we have to get the final product in by January. So we hope that we can launch it before. We're good on track. I just hired a new editor, and she's amazing, 19-year-old, amazing talent. So it's so fun to work with her. And so we're on track to getting it done by the end of the year, depending on what the whole world is going to do within the next 2 to 3 months. If there's even, an availability to listen to any of that or not, we'll see. So it kind of depends on what's going to happen socially over the next few months. But we'll definitely have it done by January with the Impact Award. So hopefully we can win that. Would be great. But we have the nomination done, so that's a good part to have. So the latest probably would be January that we launch it. The earliest probably would be December.
Wow, congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's exciting, yes.
Yeah, 2021 sounds good. Brand new year. Clean.
Well, but maybe people have to watch it before they start 2021, so that 2021 is actually becoming different than 2020.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, it's coming out soon, so it's something that people can look forward to. And if you want to stay connected with Isabel, I would say take advantage of her free gift. Be added to her list, and you'll get all of those notifications. She is giving away a free gift called "Finding the Key to Connect to Your Spiritual Self." And what exactly is that?
Well, it goes back to the emotion, what we talk about, the emotions, the spiritual understanding of our emotions. And in that free gift, I took a few of those major ones that we always feel, like anger, and explain it more in a spiritual perspective, like the guardians of our soul, where there are reflective questions, just to really become more aware and to connect more with our heart. I think that is where people really lacking, connecting with the heart space, to open space for other people to just be and to acknowledge their experience, and then we take it less personally. So that's what it's about. It gives you a little summary, and again, we picked a few of the emotions that really tie into what we've experienced mostly, and so gives us some good reflective questions, a new perspective, I think, to understand how we experience that and how we can use that to tap into our intuitive spiritual self.
That's refreshing. Help to get through some of those more challenging emotions that sometimes people try to kind of sweep under the rug, giving them space to really work through those. So thank you for sharing that. Go ahead and take advantage of Isabel's free gift, and you'll be connected with her for future events, future things that she's got coming up. So
yes,
thank you, Isabel, for joining us today and sharing your honest, open experiences. I find that to be so valuable, just those specific stories that you shared. I know they're going to help a lot of people.
I hope so. Yes, I do. I hope. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation. I loved it.
All right, audience, thank you so much for being here. And please take whatever stood out to you from today's interview and practice it, try it, let us know how it goes. And, stay positive on this journey. Your child really needs you. See you next time on the Integrated Empath Child.